There is a myth that we don't say out loud. So many of us believe it anyway. The myth is that pain has a look, that the person who is struggling is the one falling behind, not the one graduating from Howard, then Georgetown, not the one on every committee, in every activity, chasing every goal, not the one who seems from the outside to have it all together. My guest today lived on the other side of that myth. Since middle school, KeaBlackman carried a sadness and thoughts of suicide that no one around her could see because she was busy achieving. And for a long time, the world let her carry it alone. She is now a national recognized, award-winning peer recovery specialist, a speaker, an author, a social entrepreneur working on her doctorate, and the founder of an organization with a name that refuses to be ignored. Black people die by suicide too. Today, we talk about the rising crisis of suicide in the Black community, the stigma that keeps it in the dark, and the lived experience that gave her the courage to turn on the light. This is a hard conversation. Make sure you take care of yourself. It is a hopeful one. Let's begin. Welcome to Emerging with Grace. I'm loving having you here, and I'm glad that you chose this podcast to listen to. Please like, subscribe, and share so that more people can get to know how to emerge with grace. Thank you. Okay, Miss Takia Blackman, I'm so happy to have you here. And like I just said before we started, I have been following your page for a minute, so I'm honored to have you.
Thank you so much for having me, Dr. G. I'm excited to be here.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. So let's start with your lived experience.
My lived experience, I'm like, wow, how far do we go back? I think I can go back as far as maybe middle school
Okay.
is when I first started noticing that I was struggling with my mental health, but I wouldn't say I actually had the language right to say mental health
Mm-hmm.
or suicidal ideation. I didn't have the language, but I knew that as a child in about maybe seventh or eighth grade, I often had strong feelings of sadness, often thought about not wanting to be alive and even considering ways that I could end my life. But I didn't feel as though I had a safe space to go anywhere. And it's not because my parents didn't love me, but we know that mental health is very stigmatized within the Black community. I think we are
Yes.
doing a better job now talking about it, but that wasn't something people were talking about like when I was growing up in the 90s. That was not a thing.
Mm.
So I didn't tell anyone. I just kept it on the inside. I would just smile. I was very involved in extracurricular activities. So that was my outlet.
Mm-hmm.
Anything in the arts. So I did choir, I played an instrument, I did theater,
What did you play?
fashion shows, a clarinet.
Oh, that was my jam too. How long did you play?
I played it for what? Maybe I would say I started in elementary school. So like I would say maybe like 8 years I played it.
Oh, that's good.
Like
So
fourth
almost
to
into your
like,
senior year.
well, it was like fourth grade to eighth grade.
Okay.
hmm
Okay.
And so that was my way of, having a safe haven with all that I was dealing with. And so people often saw a little girl who was goal oriented and ambitious. And I still carry those traits now as a woman.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the difference was I used a lot of those things to cover up what I was feeling. So people would congratulate me or they're proud of me of what I'm doing, but not realizing I'm struggling internally.
Mm-hmm.
And so it wasn't until I got through high school, I got through college, and then right after I got my master's is when it came to a head for me. I would
Yeah.
say I felt like my childhood trauma. So some of that included, like, I did watch my mom. My mom was verbally and physically abused by, I would say, my siblings' dad. I don't necessarily call him my stepdad because I don't feel like he treated me like a daughter.
Mm-hmm.
But so experienced that, and then my dad struggling with drug addiction. And so I think all of that, and then trying to transition into adulthood, right? Like your early 20s, for some of us is very hard. That
Mm-hmm.
was hard for me.
For
And then
many,
watching,
for
yes,
many people,
yes,
early
that's
20s
a,
is a rocky stage.
yes, I don't never want to go back to my 20s.
I think it starts around 16 and goes till like 24. So,
Yes. So I'm like, yeah, that was my 20s was a really rough patch for me. And I would say I felt like my childhood trauma and then transitioning to adulthood, I felt like both worlds were colliding, if you will.
mm-hmm.
And I was just so overwhelmed that I was like, I don't want to be here anymore. And I attempted to end my life. But part of that, I'm still here today, not just because of God's grace, but also because I had a friend who I had disclosed to, and she ended up calling the police to come to my house. And at that moment, I would say that's really when my journey started. I was admitted into the hospital and really became committed, I would say, in that moment to my mental health journey, even before, right, I became a mental health professional.
So you were introduced to therapy, psychiatry, and all of that in the hospital.
Well, not therapy. I started therapy, I would say maybe a year or two before my suicide attempt.
Okay.
So I did have a therapist, but I wasn't as consistent, I would say in the
Mm.
beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I was in the hospital, well, then I had no choice but to go to psychotherapy because I was in the hospital. But after I got out, that's when I was like, I was very committed to my mental health journey.
Okay. So some people might not know when you went into the hospital, was it acute or long term?
I was in the hospital for 3 weeks. So
Okay.
I did inpatient like a week. And then I did 2 weeks of an intensive like outpatient program. Maryland, we
Uh-huh.
call them partial hospitalization programs.
Right.
So I did 2 weeks of that, and then I had 1 week inpatient.
Okay. What part of Maryland did you grow up in?
I'm originally from New Jersey, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I'm from New Jersey, raised in Elizabeth, New Jersey. My family's still there, but I have been in Maryland since 2009. I'm a
Hmm.
graduate of Howard University. Um,
Woo. The other HU.
yeah.
Right.
We gonna keep it nice and clean. So yes.
I'm a Hampton parent, so
Oh yes, yes, I know. It's always a fun rivalry. Um, so I stayed in the area for a little while. Then I got my first job in California, so I moved there for a little while. But then
hmm
I came back to go to Georgetown for my master's, and I just stayed in the area, ever since. So I've been in the area for what, almost 18 years. So this has become home for
it
me,
is a
Maryland.
beautiful area. Yes.
Yes, I love Maryland.
Okay. So let me go back just a little bit. Was your father involved in your life or because of drugs he was in and out?
Yes, he was very much so inconsistent. He wasn't completely absent,
Mm-hmm.
but there were just was moments when he was away because he was in jail or just because of addiction, just
Mm-hmm.
in the streets. So there were times where he just wasn't there.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And you are the oldest of how many?
7.
Oh, whoa.
Yes,
Oh,
so I have
okay.
5 brothers who are under me, and then my sister is the baby. So the first and the last are girls.
Oh, that's nice. Well, it was a nice wrap up, I guess.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
how did your siblings feel about your attempt?
So it's so interesting. I've actually, to this day, we've never fully talked about my attempt, but I will say that they have, of course, I don't necessarily know how it impacted them, but I will say my one of my brothers in particular, who is a writer and a rapper, he wrote a song called Spontaneous Thoughts based upon my suicide attempt. So
Oh.
that's how I was able to know a bit about what he was feeling, which was
Mm-hmm.
when I heard that song, it just like brought tears to my eyes.
Mm-hmm.
So he understood in that moment, I think, how serious it was, but we're 10 years apart. So I would say, I mean, he was still old enough. So when I had my attempt, he was like 15. But
Mm.
they, I would say we never had a conversation, but what I will say is that they've been following my journey and they will come to me for certain things related to mental health. So I had one of my brothers come to me and say, like, hey, what are the signs of depression? So we like had that talk. Or sometimes I'll just talk to them about my struggles because I have a diagnosis of generalized anxiety as well as bipolar disorder. So I
Mm-hmm.
still will talk to them like about my current struggles that I, still face to this day. And I'll tell them, like I just told my brother the other day, like, it's been really hard. I'm like going through a med adjustment. And so like the conversation in terms of mental health and challenges, they're normalized within my family, I would say now, because even my mom has like gone to therapy. One of my brothers
Mm.
went to therapy. So I would say like my lived experience definitely opened the door for my family to start therapy.
Made people aware. I love
Mhm.
that. Now you're also making people aware of Black people dying by suicide as well. Um, what is your degree in? What is your master's in?
My master's is actually in not in mental health. My master's is in corporate communications and public relations.
Okay.
Currently, I'm a PhD student, so now I'm getting into yeah. So I'm right now. My master's focuses on public health communications.
Uh-huh.
So I look at the psychology of communication and studying what messages make people feel more connected, less alone. And so my focus is specifically Black suicide prevention. So that's what I'm about to go into my second year of my PhD program.
Well,
So
congratulations.
thank you.
Now what's your PhD in?
Communication science and social cognition.
Okay.
Yep, with a focus
Fantastic.
on public health.
And you're kind of doing that. You're breaking stigma. So
Hmm.
I love that. Okay. So I'm going to keep everybody in understanding. So you went
Yes.
for acute because you were there a week.
Hmm.
And then you went into IOP, which is what we call intensive outpatient or partial hospitalization.
Hmm.
Um, how did you feel with the support you were getting?
At first, I was just very upset because I was like, why am I here?
Mm,
I had this misconception that because I was educated and because I was goal oriented and I was working on having a successful career, I'm like, I shouldn't have these challenges. But I will never forget there was I believe she was like this behavioral health unit director.
hmm.
And she told me I will never forget these words. She said, you're here because you have not been doing a great job of taking care of your brain. When people
I like
struggle and
that.
yeah, and that was 10 years ago, right? Or
You're right.
over
Right.
10 years ago. Um, and she said, just like when people struggle with their heart, they have to go see the cardiologist. Your
Hmm.
brain is an organ, and that's why you're here. And she looked at me when I said, I went to Howard and I went to Georgetown, and she said, so what? Like
Basically. Right.
you're here because you need the help. Now, in that moment, I don't think I didn't fully grasp what she meant because I would at that time I was just so upset that I was there. I was mad at my
Hmm.
friend. I'm like, I don't belong here with those people because in
Hmm.
my mind, what I have tend to see with people who struggle with mental health challenges, right? Like people who are on the street or what the media shows us. So that was the only representation that I had. And because I didn't fit the image that I saw, I was said, I don't belong here. I remember even calling my aunt and telling her back in New Jersey, because my family had to come down from New Jersey to support me. And even my aunt, when I called her to tell my mom, she says, "You don't belong there with those people." I'm like, "Girl, I know, me too. I've been trying to tell them, but they're not listening to me." And so I would say at first I was definitely upset. And I think when I came out of outpatient to go into partial hospitalization, I don't know if I was still upset. I think I was still trying to make sense of it and understand my diagnosis and understand how it impacts me and what I need to do to be healthy. So there was a lot of, right, psychoeducation, understanding what my triggers are,
Mm-hmm.
understanding what it means to actually be intentional about practicing self-care daily, understanding to make sure that I have an array of wellness tools, what to do if I'm in a crisis, what resources are available. So it was really a lot of rediscovering myself and addressing those areas that I hid so much. I think I shied behind it in terms of my accomplishments. And that started back as a young girl. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like, "Oh, she got a master's. That's awesome. Oh, she's doing this. That's awesome." But realizing there's no amount of success that's going to fill the void or cover up me, right, being unhappy within.
Correct. Correct. Happiness is, I think it was said, happiness is a state of mind. And it is, and people think it's circumstances, but your brain determines if you're getting enough dopamine or serotonin. And with that being said, that means some of your medicine increased your dopamine or your serotonin.
Mm-hmm.
How did you
Yep.
feel about taking your medicine?
Well, it's so interesting we're having that conversation because when I first got on the medication, I was like, I don't want to take it. I don't want to rely on, medication to make me be able to function. But I wouldn't say that about not taking my inhaler and I have
Right,
asthma.
right. If you having an
So,
asthma attack. So,
right, I'm just not going to leave it there because I can't breathe. But I think once even though I didn't want to take it, but I knew I needed to take it in order to be able to function, I did what I was supposed to do, not necessarily what I wanted to do.
mhm.
Um, and over time, I did very well to the point where I was weaned off the medication and I was using my coping skills and right, going to therapy, all my wellness tools, right, implementing my boundaries, all those things. So I was doing really well for a time. And then most recently, I made the decision to get back on medication because I'm going through a lot of transitions currently at one time. And I realized how going through multiple transitions at one time was actually impacting my ability to function, like
Mhm.
get out of bed and take care of my hygiene, those daily living activities that sometimes people may take for granted, but when you are struggling, that it's actually hard to do. And
It
so
is.
I made the decision and said, like, I have to get back on medication. Part of that is grief. I've lost um a lot of people in the past 4 years, including three of my grandparents, my sister,
Mm,
a childhood friend, my great grandmother and uncle. Like it's just been back to back. And
mhm,
then started the organization, right? So there's a transition into that. I started
mhm.
my PhD program. So there's all these things happening at one time. And I realized this is a lot. I'm also in a field, right? I'm working within this organization, hearing stories that people share, right? Like in our
Yeah.
support groups, going out into the community. So I'm hearing, right, vicarious trauma, right? So I'm hearing all
Mhm.
these things. I'm in my PhD program. I'm reading studies on suicide, right? And to me, I don't see numbers. I see people, you
Right.
know? And I realized like, wow, this is heavy stuff. Like I have my own challenges that I'm navigating, but the work that I'm involved in is heavy. And I was like, oh no, I have to get back on medication. until whenever me and my doctor decide like I'm okay. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's when I learned, that's, I would say, most recently, when I just told myself I cannot hold myself to the standard when I was like off of my medication and I was doing really well, because I think part of me felt like, well, am I a failure because I need it again? But then that's when I told myself, like, no, you're in a different season in your life. And you're I'm in a different season. I'm adjusting, and I cannot hold myself to the standard when I was in a different season. And so I just made the choice. Like, I don't really deal with shame or guilt at this moment.
Good.
Just because I know I'm doing what I need to do, because if I was not on it, I would not be able to function. I wouldn't be able to get out of bed. And I told myself, I said, girl, you have too much to do to not be on this medication. You're not going to be able to get anything done. And so, because I want to get things done, I was
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, we just going to go ahead and get back on the medication.
You are definitely leading a movement, and I don't want to pass that, but I just think it's really important for the people listening to understand that medicine is not your enemy. Therapy is not your enemy. And one of the things you said, when you and your doctor decide, your doctor is your teammate in this. So sometimes we can have misjudgment and we might think, yeah, I'm good. I can handle this. And I love the fact that you have jumped in and said, no, I can't. And I need a little extra.
Absolutely. I was the one that reached out to my psychiatric nurse practitioner. I was like, hey, so it's been a while. I need to see you again. I'm not doing well. And I at that point I just did what I needed to do, because at the end of the day, I also know that even though I'm doing this for myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
My journey, my just taking care of myself so that I can have the best quality of life possible. I also do realize that people do look up to me. People look at me
Mm-hmm.
and they see me as an inspiration. They see what I'm doing. And so part of me is like, I can't be a hypocrite.
Right.
Right? I have to make sure that I am actually, talking the talk and walking the walk. And so I that's also important to me, because and whether it's people in the community or just family members.
Mm-hmm. Well, what kind of groups are you running?
Yeah, so we have our virtual, well, we do them in person too, but we have our peer support groups.
Mm-hmm.
And they are for individuals who struggle with suicidal thoughts or any mental health challenges. The reason why it's not necessarily focused on suicide, but we make it known that it's okay to talk about it, because Black people haven't had spaces to talk about it without fear of the police being called.
Right. Mm-hmm.
That's what some of the feedback that we got in our surveys. Like, of course, if somebody says they're actively planning, like, we have had to de-escalate, but for the most part, that was only one time. We have never had anyone necessarily say, like, I want to do this right now. It's more so, I just need a space to talk about it. And
Mm-hmm.
I think because a lot of times when people who maybe don't have the education, when they hear suicide, they think a plan. And I always have to tell people, like, active versus passive are two different, and how you treat one is not necessarily how you treat the other. And so
Mm-hmm.
our support groups really provide a safe space for people to do that. We have had people join our support groups from Canada, United Kingdom, right, all over the United States.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when I said Black people all over the world, like, they ready to talk about
Yes.
it. We just
Yes.
haven't had a space to do so. So we have that, our support groups. We also do our support groups in person, but they're called cozy conversations. And basically, instead of sitting in like a traditional support group circle
Mm-hmm.
that most people may be used to or may see in movies, like an AA meeting or any sort of, even if it's a therapy support group, we actually have it where people are learning a particular wellness tool. So cozy conversation came up because we had it during the winter, where people were making hand knitting and making blankets.
Oh, wow.
And while they were hand knitting and making blankets, we had conversations about suicide prevention and mental health, self-care, wellness. And then they are also practicing, right, mindfulness, because some people get really anxious being in a circle. So, and they're also learning a new wellness tool because the only thing they
Correct.
need are their hands and the yarn to make the
Mm-hmm.
blanket. So those have been really popular and people really like that. And that's when we realized people that sometimes it may feel very sterile or remind people of the hospital if they're like in this typical support group.
Mm-hmm.
But people at the end, they feel accomplished because they made this blanket. And they're like, oh, now I could do this on my own. So Cozy Conversations is another iteration of our support groups that we do in person as well.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So you started your um business when? And it's nonprofit, right?
Yes, it's a nonprofit.
Mhm.
So yes, because I have an LLC too. So I'm like, yes, I do so many things. But I
You
started
haven't
Black.
stopped since eighth grade.
I really haven't. That's why I'm exhausted and I rest every chance. I make sure I am being intentional about my rest.
Hmm.
Um,
And
but
let me stop you there because I know we put this off for a good 8 weeks before I could get you in because you were on a hiatus. Am I correct?
well, I really wasn't on a hiatus. What I will say was yes. So initially, I think when you initially reached out, I was wrapping up the end of the semester.
Mm-hmm.
So I was wrapping up the end of the semester, and at the end of my semester, I had a lot happening. I competed in a national pageant.
And you were beautiful.
Thank
Beautiful.
you. So, right, and I won that, and then I had to do a pitch competition, and I won the pitch competition and money for the organization. I was training for a 10K, so I was running, right? I have fallen in love with running.
Mm,
Um, so I was doing all of that. And then I also teach two classes at the university where I'm getting my PhD. So there was all these things happening, and I had two keynotes that I was delivering as well. So
mm.
there was all these things happening. And I was like, wait, I need to be present because if I tried to squeeze you in, I was already tired. I was already exhausted. And I was like, I'm not going to be able to give it my all.
Correct.
So I want to make
Okay.
sure that I'm present and have the best version of myself.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where the hiatus was because there was all these things happening. Then after that I was like, okay, I need to take a moment. And when I in that process of taking the moment after everything kind of fizzled out, I was like, I'm not okay. So I needed that
Mm,
moment to slow
mm-hmm.
down because in the midst of all that was going on, I was so busy that I didn't realize that I knew I was tired. I knew I was, exhausted. I was experiencing some burnout, but I didn't realize like, oh, I'm actually in a depression.
Mm-hmm.
But I know we hear people talking about, right, like high functioning depression, even though I have a diagnosis of bipolar disorder, but I'm
Bipolar is depression.
yeah, right. And I've experienced more depression than hypomania.
Mm-hmm.
So I was realizing like, oh my gosh, I'm struggling. And I'm glad that I took that beat because if I would have kept moving, it would have easily been missed. So for me, when I start noticing things like I'm more irritable, I am isolating and don't really want to talk to anybody, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm struggling to take care of my hygiene. I'm not meal prepping. It's harder for me to get up and work out. Like I'm somebody who actually enjoys, I never thought I would see the day I enjoy working out, but I do because it really does help give me a place, particularly running. I realized I didn't really have a place for my anger. I was
Mm,
dealing with a lot of grief and anger came with that. And yes, I have my therapist and I can talk through it, but running gives me a somatic release
mm-hmm.
that I didn't realize like, oh wow, I'm actually processing my grief. I'm connected to my body because when I'm running, I have to be mindful of my breath. I have to
Mm-hmm.
know when I need to slow my pace down. And so it's been a place of, I think, solitude and I've been feeling like it's been a very spiritual experience for me. I would have never thought that. And so that's when I was like, okay, I'm doing all of these things that I know is good for my mental health, but I'm still struggling. And that's when the decision came like, oh, the medication, because I do things right, making sure I go to bed on time. My family knows my boundaries are pretty tight with like, I don't answer my phone after 8 o'clock because
Oh,
people know
nice.
like, I'm going to bed because I wake up at 5:30 in the morning.
Oh,
If I
wow.
am up
Okay.
all night, and I tell
It
people all the
throws
time, like,
off your whole day.
yes, I'm not gonna be able to function. And I'm like, if it's an emergency, call 911. I will find out in the morning. It's nothing I can do.
Right.
Um, so I've been, so that's when I realized, like, okay, all these things are, I have the tools, right? I've been with my therapist almost 11 years, right? I don't have to see her as frequently as I did in the beginning. I'm like, I know all the things I need to do. And so when I start noticing when I start noticing these things, or if like my productivity,
Mm-hmm.
I'm somebody who's very high performing. And so when it starts to shift and I see like it takes me longer to do simple tasks, or I'm moving slower, it's the irritability is a huge thing for me, because my mom always says like, "Ooh, you don't want to be around you." Like that's I'm not too pleasant to be around then. So that's when I'm like, "Oh, okay, yes, this is why I have to do something." So taking that time to slow down is so
It
important.
is.
So I would say I'm proud of myself for doing that, because that's when I was just like, "Oh, yes, no, can we do that?" And then I know we were supposed to have it a few days ago. Then that's when I had to follow up with my doctor's like, "Can you come in? Because I need to do check your
Adjust. Yeah.
yeah, right." So that's when I was like, okay, yeah, I have to go to the doctor because I want to make sure I am good.
I love your honesty and I love your boundaries. These are things, and your other mental health toolkit that you have is your exercise because that increases your serotonin and your
Yes,
dopamine.
dopamine. Yes, those
Yes.
feel good chemicals. Yes. And
Yes.
I'm also a list checker. So I like when I check things off my list, I get my hit of dopamine. So when I'm not able to check things off, I'm like, oh, I'm not feeling too good. So I was like, I need this medication so I get back to checking
Ooh,
things off my
you
list.
checked a lot of things off in the last couple of weeks here. So, okay, go ahead. Tell us about how you got your business started and, what was your motivation besides your hospitalization?
Yeah, so Black People Die by Suicide too. We're a nonprofit. We
Mm-hmm.
focus on preventing suicide within the Black community. And the reason why it was started, not just because I survived an attempt, but I also lost my 13-year-old cousin to suicide.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yes. And so I started looking at the numbers, and I started seeing that there has been a rapid increase of Black people dying by suicide, right?
Mm-hmm.
Black youth ages 5 to 12 are twice as likely to die by suicide.
Yeah.
And I realized I don't see any nonprofits that's focusing solely on Black suicide prevention. Now,
Mm-hmm.
yes, there are other Black mental health organizations,
Mm-hmm.
but nobody is that they don't really say suicide.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I started saying to myself, I'm not saying that organizations aren't doing it, but they're focused on mental health is very broad.
It is.
So I remember talking to my co-founder, just saying like, we can't omit suicide from the mental health conversation. More people were even talking about, right, mental health because of COVID, even though,
Mm-hmm.
mental health was a thing before COVID, but
It
people just
was.
started talking about it. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, I said, no one says the S word. And I'm like, but it's a part of my story. It's a part of so many other people's story. And I've also connected with so many other people who lost loved ones to suicide. I'm like, we don't
Mm-hmm.
have a place to go.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when I decided to start the organization, because I wanted to make sure that Black people had safe spaces to go, whether they were personally struggling or they lost a loved one to suicide.
Yeah. So you have both groups. You have one for those who have lost a loved one.
So we haven't started those groups yet, but what we do have for them, we started last year a wellness retreat. It's called
Mm.
Healing After Loss. And it's a wellness retreat for people who lost loved ones to suicide. Last year was the first year we did it, and people loved it.
Tell
And
me a
so
little
that's
bit about
something.
it.
Yeah, so Healing After Loss, For the first year, we partnered with the University of Maryland, Baltimore, Washington Medical Center. And what we did in the beginning of the retreat, we also trained attendees in QPR, question, persuade, and refer. So we trained them on a evidence-based suicide intervention training. So recognizing the signs, best ways to support loved ones, and resources that are in the community. So we had that in the retreat. Of course, we fed people all day. It was an all-day thing. But and then from there, we went into what we had a healing circle where people got a chance to honor their loved one. It was very it moved me to tears. It was an amazing experience. But in the healing circle, there was a moment where we had asked all of the attendees to take a flower and also to write notes to their loved one on we call it the healing tree. And there was a tree that we had, and they put the notes on their loved ones. And I remember one of the moms broke out in like a spiritual hymn. And of course, everybody's
nice.
Black here. And we didn't know that it was going to happen. It was very organic. And I remember after that moment, people were saying, where has this been? Like, I've been waiting for something like this. And even after the healing circle, they got a chance to make candles in honor of their loved ones.
Oh.
And then after we closed it out with the sound bath. Some people never experienced a sound bath. They didn't know what it was. People were laid out on that floor sleeping because it was a long day. It was like from like 9 to 5. So people were exhausted. There were good moments, but there was also moments where people were emotional and crying.
Right.
And so people enjoyed it because they said that they were in a space where other people got it. Because yes, you can lose somebody to a car accident or cancer, but it's very different when it comes to suicide.
It is.
And so they had that unique experience, and so many loved ones who were in attendance said, this is what I needed. Like, I can't wait till you guys do this again. And so that's something we're working on. We're working on having that towards the end of the year because we know the holidays tend to get challenging for people. And so we'll bring that back. And so that's what we have started doing for loved ones. And part of that was because sometimes they would attend our support groups and they would say, like, I'm only coming here to see what my loved one was thinking, to see how, if I missed something, or to see how I can better understand
And that
people
would
who
be the
struggle.
QPR that you teach.
So yes, but no, I would say the loved ones would come to our support groups, like for people who were struggling. And I started realizing there was an uptick in people who were losing loved ones. And I said, oh, hey, we need specific programming for them, which is why we created the Healing After Loss Wellness Retreat for them.
Love it. I love it. Okay, so we keep about to get to it. Tell us about Black people die by suicide too.
In terms of the organization or the
I mean, you're
specifically?
doing so wonderful with all of your things that you're doing. You have the groups, you have the organization, you had personally, you had the 10K run. And I remember, I forgot about your co-founder till you just said something, but I remember you guys used to do
the
videos
podcast
together.
Yeah,
Yes.
so yes, we used to do the podcast together. So the podcast, we had to make the decision to put it on hold because before we were an organization, it was only a podcast. Once we became a nonprofit and we started getting grant funding, right? The grants dictate where our priorities have to go. And our podcast, we were self-funding our podcast, like right out of our own pockets before we got any sort of grant funding. And so since we had to kind of shift our priorities because one, capacity wasn't there. We're a small team of 4 people. We have our board. And so we had to shift to focus on the priorities of the grants that we've gotten. And so the podcast has just kind of been placed on hold, but people can listen to the episodes are still up. People can listen to it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever they listen to it. Or if they want to go watch the videos on YouTube, like the podcast didn't necessarily go away. The content is still there. Right now we're just focusing on structuring and making sure that we have a strong foundation in the organization, because I like to say I don't have children, but because I'm the oldest of seven and I've done my share of babysitting in the organization, I look at it as a toddler because it's three. It's
Mm-hmm.
becoming more popular, it's taking off. And so part of that is learning when to shift or put things on pause, and also recognizing our capacity. We only can do but so much. And so yeah, so we have the podcast. We also, yes, we have QPR. That's a workshop that we offer. We also offer our signature workshop, which is called "It's Not a White Thing. Black People Die by Suicide Too."
Oh,
And just because, right, we've often hear the messaging that suicide is a white thing.
everybody. Mm-hmm.
Right. That's what I've been told for as long as I can remember. And
Mm-hmm.
so we have a specialized training specifically that tackles, right, like racial trauma, looking at like cultural and historical trauma and how that impacts us as well. So we infuse that into the workshop as well. So we do that. So those are like our main programs. And then what we have coming up specifically, we're gearing up for our Black Mental Health Awards. So that's what we have coming up. The Black Mental Health Awards is our inaugural gala, and this is the yeah, so it's the first year. This will
Mm-hmm.
be something that we do every year. The Black Mental Health Awards is really an opportunity to raise funds for culturally responsive mental health resources, but to also honor people in the field who are doing the work
The
within the
work.
community.
Mhm.
So that's happening September 26th, and where we have 8 honorees that'll be happening in Baltimore and Martins West. And so it's a great opportunity. We're also giving a scholarship away to a rising clinician who is a current master's student, and the scholarship is in honor of uh, my late grandmother who recently passed. And so that will be, it's bittersweet, but it's also a great way to honor her. So the Black Mental Health Awards is where our time is and what we're focusing on right now. Tickets are selling really fast, and people are very excited because there hasn't really been anything like this in the area. Like there, of
Mm-hmm.
course, there's been like galas and things like that, but something specifically that's ongoing and focusing on Black mental health.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're excited about it. This has been something that I have actually wanted to do since 2018,
Beautiful.
but I didn't have a necessarily a vehicle to do it because I
Mm-hmm.
didn't have the organization. So I wasn't 100% sure of how I could do it. And so when we had the organization, I'm like, this is a great vehicle to use to host the Black Mental Health Awards. So there'll also be entertainment as well. Of course, there'll be food, there'll be awards. And so we're really excited about this as an opportunity to bring this to the community, especially like to have it in Baltimore as well.
Okay. I want to thank you, Miss Blackman, for coming on and taking the time for my show.
Absolutely.
Because I think people can learn from what you have said, and you said a lot. So I would love to try to encapsulate that for somebody else to grow and probably find you.
Absolutely.
How
Thank you so
can we
much for
find
having
you?
me. How you can find me, so many ways. If you want to connect with the organization, we're Black People Die by Suicide Too on all platforms, which include Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. My personal platforms, I use Instagram and LinkedIn. I'm
Mm-hmm.
Takia Blackman on Instagram and LinkedIn. If learning more about the organization, you can also go to blackpeoplediebysuicide2.org and learn more about our programs and what we have coming up. And you can sign up for our newsletter because we put our newsletter out frequently with updates in terms of where we will be or community events that we're having. People can also, if you decide you want to donate to support our cause, you can do that as well too.
All right. Thank you again. And hopefully, maybe you could come back and tell us about the awards after they happen.
Yes, I would love to.
All right. As we end the show, I normally don't do an afterthought, but I thought this segment actually deserved one. I'd like to share something personal. Recording this episode was one of the hardest things I've ever done. I scheduled it in May, and shortly thereafter, the most unimaginable thing happened where my grandson, Braxton Byrd, at 19, completed suicide. There were moments when I wondered if I could find the words, but I realized this conversation was exactly where I need to be. My grandson dreamed big. He created his own clothing line, and he wanted everybody to feel special. His sister has pushed that clothing line so that it will continue to show his brand. I will put the link in the down below. My daughter created a suicide awareness fundraiser. I will also add that link because we want people to know that they matter and no one should suffer in silence. Today, I'm pushing both of these forward by speaking his name, supporting the work he began, and continuing these conversations. His purpose lives on through us. If sharing this story of Miss Blackman helps just one person choose hope, reach out for help, or reminds one family member that they are not alone, then my grandson's light, soon to be Dr. Blackman's light, will continue to shine, and someone may understand that they matter. Everyone matters. This is how I am honoring my grandson, with love, with purpose, and by never forgetting his story's end.
Waiting my life for the sunshine.